I want you to create a simple polygon sphere. To do that, we go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Sphere. I don't want the option box. I just want you to create the sphere, and we're going to look at it in the default. Okay, there's obviously another way to do it. You can go to your Polygons built-in shelf and click on the sphere here. But I want you to create Polygon Sphere. Over here, you should have an attribute editor and a channel box and layer editor. You can switch back and forth between the two. In the attribute editor, I want you to change the subdivision axis to 5, the subdivision height to 5. Watch what happens to my sphere. It gets simplified. I also want you to change the scale to 2. So we're going to make it twice the size. So you're going to have something that looks like this. If you don't have your attribute editor, your channel box layer editor, you may have buttons up here that will allow you to see those, or you may have to go to Windows and find them in here. They're not easy to find all the time. I'd have to dig around and try to find them in here. Normally they're up. You can hit Control A to get your attribute editor. That's a hotkey I use quite a bit, Control A, because an attribute editor has everything you want to know about a particular object you have selected, or anything else. It could be a light. It could be a camera. It could be anything in Maya. It could be a curve. It'll give you the attributes for that object. So start learning a little bit about the attribute editor and the channel box, which they both have some things in common, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So quick review. What we just did was we created a polygon primitive sphere, and then we changed its attributes by clicking on certain things over here in the attribute editor. We could have gotten that same polygon sphere if we would have set that up in our polygon primitives sphere options box. Don't forget we have options boxes. Any chance you get, you should click on the options box so you can see what options you have for each action. In this case, we have the presets for creating a sphere. If I were to change this to 5, which is twice 2.5, right? That's the same as setting the scale to 2, like you guys did. So I'm doubling, the radius is like doubling the scale. If I change subdivision axis 5 to 5, just like you guys did in your attribute editor and created it, you'll see I got the same object. Okay? Now, hotkeys review. What hotkey do I hit to get my move manipulator? Shout it out. Alt T. Anybody else? W. Remember QWERTY? Q is select. W is move. What is E? Rotation. They don't really, the hard part is they don't really stand for anything, right? W stands for move. What? How do I remember when I first started playing with Maya, how did I remember that W is move, besides understanding that we always have move, rotation, and scale, all related, right? Those are our translation options, just like in Photoshop. And that we have QWERTY across the top, sort of makes sense. But mentally, how do I remember that W stands for move? How would you remember it? Huh? A walking? That's a good way to remember it. What is a W? It's an upside down M for move. That's how I remember it personally. Or we can call it wove. Or is that wove? Why is W-O-V-E wove and M-O-V-E is move? It's a messed up language. E is rotate. How do you remember that? I have no idea. I just remember E is rotate. R is not rotate. R is what? Scale. Okay? Right now, currently, if you see this word down here, we're in persp. What does persp stand for? Perspective, which means what? This is like life view, right? I mean, this is like world view. All angles, rotating around. We have the capabilities of rotating all over the place in perspective view. If I tap my space bar, watch what happens. It splits. And by the way, this is a setting. Pretty much everything in Maya can be set to something different, or you can set a hotkey for anything you want. Okay, that's advanced. If you want to figure out how to do that, go for it. For now, let's just keep it simple. Now that I'm in a split screen 4 ways, you'll see that I've got my top view here, my front view here, my side view here, and again, perspective here. I can go into each one of these and move around separately. Notice how I can't rotate in orthographic views, but I can move in and out, and I can move left to right. Middle mouse button moves the camera. Right mouse button zooms, just like scroll button does. I know there are some scroll buttons in here that don't work, so if you need to be able to zoom in and out, right mouse button. If I want to view my object from the top, tap my space bar. To get back to 4 view, tap my space bar. To go to side, I take my cursor into this viewport, tap my space bar. So I can go to any view very quickly this way, or once again, when I'm in perspective, I can hold down my space bar, click on hold on Maya, and go to whichever view I want that are available around here. I can go quickly back and forth. So space bar is also an important hotkey. That's why I always have my hand down on my bottom left of my keyboard, because that stuff is all over here. Important things. Now, what I want you to do with this geometry, not only do I want you to play with those hotkeys that I just gave you so you get comfortable moving things around, we're going to chamfer. That's right, I said chamfer. It's a weird term. Verts. How do I get to component mode in Maya? F8 is object mode, right? In object mode, when I select my object, it highlights in green. Shift Q? I'm not sure what that does. It sort of scares me. What does Shift Q do? Oh, wow, it does go there. Shift Q. Where'd you learn that one? Oh, Shift Q. I like to use, it's funny, there's a lot of different ways to skin cats in this software. I like to use F9, F10, and F11. Okay, again, F8 is component mode. Now watch what happens up underneath my main menu. Those are hotkeys for this stuff up here. You'll see if I hover over this, select by object type. This is select by object component. So if I hit F9, it goes to select object by component and vert. F10 goes to edge. F11 goes to face. I want you to go to F9, select the top point and the bottom point of your sphere, and go to Edit Mesh, under where it says Vertex, Chamfer Vertices, option box. You'll see there's not a whole lot of options in this. Basically, what you have is a distance that you want it to chamfer. And when I hit Chamfer Vertex, watch what happens. Basically, it gets rid of that single vert. It splits it 5 ways. And the reason it splits it 5 ways is because it was attached to 5 edges. It creates a new face. So we have one there and one there because we did them both at the same time. Does anybody have, if you go to F9 and select a component, do any of you have a situation where your edges turn yellow? Raise your hand if that happens to you. Your edges turn yellow. Okay, good. So that, by default, I think Maya has this setting, a tool setting that is called soft select. So if I have soft select on and I select avert and I move it, others go with it. And I can't stand it. I don't like that. I don't want it. So if that ever happens to you, and the yellow means if I do something to this vert, it'll control these, and to a lesser effect, the ones a little further away. I just uncheck soft select, and I get rid of my tool settings. I don't need those up. So make sure soft select is not on. But going forward, what we want to do is extrude both of your new faces that you created. So what is the hotkey? F11 is correct. Face selection mode. So think about it, guys. I've told you that we have 3 components in Maya that can be manipulated. The most important ones that create a polygon. And again, a polygon, the simplest form of the polygon is a triangle. What are those components? Vertex, edge, face, in that order. You cannot have an edge without a vertex. Actually, without 2 vertices. So you need 2 vertices to create an edge. You need 3 vertices to create 2 edges, which is an angle. And if you connect the last 2 vertices, it'll create a triangle. And you need edges and vertices to create a face. That's why it goes vertex, edge, face. Does that make sense? Because you can't have a face without edges, and you can't have any edges without verts. Therefore, we go up our function keys from F8, which is object selection mode, to F9, vert, F10, edge, F11, face. Okay? So maybe hopefully that makes it a little easier to remember. So what I want you to do is hit F11, select your new faces, and by the way, notice if I have my move tool up, what happens when I move them? Oh, that one went in, that one went up. I don't want that. I'm going to create basically 2 handles going positive direction Y and negative direction Y at the same time. Again, problem solving. 2 handles. To do that, I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. And when I have that, you're not going to see anything happen. You'll see a little window pop up. But now I'm going to grab my Z manipulator, which is a little odd because normally you're going, well, that's not Z direction, that's Y direction. It gets a little messed up when we start doing some of this stuff. Don't worry about it. Just know that, hey, I want one of these to go up and one to go down. If I grab my Z move arrow and pull down, you'll see them both go at the same time. The top one goes in the opposite direction. Okay, that just... Before we go forward with some of the modeling tips, I want to make you aware of our shelves. So we have shelves here. These are all default pre-built-in shelves that have a lot of the same functions you'll find under your menus. We talked about, remember yesterday, we talked about some of the menu sets, modeling, rigging, animation effects, rendering, customize, etc. You'll find that if I have polygons here, I've got create polygon primitives here. So you'll see, start getting familiar with these icons. You can see sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, etc. These shelves are used for speed, for efficiency. I've started creating my custom shelf. You guys should all have custom shelves. And in order to get a button that you frequently use on your custom shelf, you go to the menu item, hold down Control-Shift, and click on that function. So for example, I like to use my outliner, O-U-T, this little window thing. And I'm going to show you how to get my outliner onto the shelf. If I go to Windows, Outliner, but I hold down Control-Shift, click Outliner, it popped on here. Now anytime I hit that button, I get my outliner. I want you to go to your Custom tab, and put an outliner button on your custom shelf by going to Windows, Control-Shift, Outliner. So we just created an outliner button on our shelf. By the way, if I go to polygons, look at all the things in here. We showed you that already, the geometry. There's also actions over here, functions. This is extrude. I added extrude to my custom shelf. If I go to edit mesh, extrude, look what's over here. Little itty bitty tiny extrude icon. So pretty much everything in Maya has an icon associated with it. Do you have to memorize all of them? No. Does it pay to pay attention to some of them? Yes. If I create a button for something that doesn't have a name or a hint like OUTL, which clearly is outl, then you might want to know what that is. I have two outliners on here. They're both the exact same. If I click on either one, it's just going to say, oh, I'm right here. Hey, I'm right here. I can close it. Click on that one. Close it. Click on that one. It's the same button. So you can have multiple buttons for the same action, which is not desirable. So if I want to get rid of a button, I can right click on it and go delete, or I can click on my shelves editor, which, as we all know, the little the little wheel, what's that called, gear, is always settings, right? And all this software all over the world, we got settings. And anytime you see a gear, it means it's a setting for something. So I can look at my shelf. This is the name of my shelf. Under animation, I have all this stuff. Under rendering shelf, I have all this stuff. Under custom, I have all this stuff. History, center pivot, hypershade, outliner, hypergraph, extrude, and outliner again. I don't want outliner. I've got it already. I'm going to click on it and delete it. I can organize these. I can move my hypershade down, later. I can move it back up. You can see it move in real time right up here. Save all shelves. And I've got it. Okay, so just know you can have total control over your shelves. You can customize it very easily. Now, problem. I want my problem solvers ready to go. What we just did with extrude F11, and if I hit F, by the way, remember F is frame, I can zoom right into that face, and my center rotation of my camera is now rotating around the center of that face. Just like if I went down here and I said, I want to center this face, I click on it, hit F, it frames it. If I want to go back to the middle, F, frames it, I'm rotating around that face now. Click F. Quick way to go in and out of an object and go right to where you want to work on is hitting F. What happens when we do extrude, and I'm going to use my hotkey shortcut shelf button extrude, is it essentially created a face right on top of the other face. It duplicated my face. That sounds funny, I know that. Nobody wants to duplicate this face. It duplicated your face. However, that face is connected to the other face by way of edges and verts, essentially edges. So if I just did that, I just extruded, right? You saw me click that. I've got my manipulator up, and my extrusion manipulator has rotation. I can rotate it if I want, by the way. Rotate. Ugh. I can scale. Ugh. I can move. Whoa. Okay. I'm just zing out of those to show you that you can do all those things with this multi-purpose functional manipulator tool. If I pull it up, it was a face on top of the face attached to the other face by way of edges. This edge, this edge, and the other two on the other side. Wireframe. Okay? So, I'm going to Z out of that. And I want to make sure I don't have an extra face on there. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes you hit extrude twice, you get an extra face, you don't know it, that's bad. I only have one. How do I create? This is the problem I want you to solve, and I'll give you about 5 minutes to solve it. On both sides of those extruded faces, the top and the bottom, how do I make it look as though those cylinders are hollow? How do I make it look as though those cylinders are hollow? And the catch is that the walls of these cylinders need to have some thickness. In other words, let me show you what I don't want to see. Some of you that might know a little bit about modeling will go, okay, well, I need to shift select both of my faces. I'm going to make this thing hollow. Delete. Look, Mr. Parley, that's hollow. I can see all the way through it. No. I don't want a thin, planar wall. I want it to look like it has some thickness, like you could grab onto it with your hands. So how do we make that? How do we create them so that they're hollow with a thick wall? And I don't care what thickness, but some sort of thickness on those walls. Okay? That's your problem to solve. 5 minutes. I'm going to Z so I get my faces back. So in order to create these columns, these pillars, whatever we want to call them, to look like they have thickness, I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to zoom into the top one, and I'm going to once again extrude. I'm going to go have fun and go up to this shelf to that extrude, not that it matters. And I want to scale it onto itself. And right now I don't have a manipulator that will do that, right? I've got sort of the basic fundamental manipulator options, but if I click on one of my scale boxes, just click and let go, as soon as it highlights, it's a little buggy there. I get the blue one, the light blue one in the middle. I click on that, scale it upon itself. Okay, so again, extrude creates another face right on top of the other face. But that doesn't mean there are two there. That means basically one doesn't really exist yet until you extrude the other one. And you can extrude it north, south, east, west, or on itself. And you'll see that the other one up here should be the same. I got the same thing going on. Now what happens, what if I extrude again? Without clicking anything else. Extrude again. I just created another face on itself. And now I go inward. And I've got a pillar. It looks like it has thickness. Yes, there's a bottom to it there. Yes, there's a bottom to it there. But it has a thick wall to it. It hasn't deleted any faces. It's still all one piece. That's pretty much all the modeling we're going to do today. But we're going to show you a few more hotkeys that could help you down the road. Back to that whole manipulator scaling idea. If you really want control over the size, thickness of your manipulators, go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Manipulators. There you're going to find some sliders. That'll go global scale, way too big, way too big. Get something that's manageable for you and your project. You can set the handles nice and big and juicy. I like them just so they're big enough to grab them. Line size, I'm not even really sure what that does, unless it might be the rotation manipulator. I'm going to keep that at 1, etc., etc., etc. So I'm going to save that. That works for me. It's simple. They're far enough away from each other that they're easily selectable. Keep in mind, I saw this as a common sort of error. If I have a face and I decide to extrude it and I want to scale it upon itself, a lot of you guys were searching around trying to figure out how that works. Again, this is the default manipulator for that function. I have to tell Maya that I want to scale it in all directions proportionally. So I have to click on one of the cubes in order to get this light blue cube activated so that I can then scale it on its own. If I don't do that, I won't have the ability of doing that. Now, I can do it, but I got to do it side by side, individually, and that's not how we want to work.